So Ryan Day is spending this offseason seeing exactly what it feels like to be Nick Saban. You win a national title, and then everybody wants your players, they want your staff members, they want everything about it, because why would you not go steal from the formula that just won a national championship? Justin Frye has added himself to Ryan Day's to-do list as he is headed to the NFL to reunite with Paris Johnson as he'll take over as the offensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals. And so now Ryan Day's got to find a new offensive line coach. We'll talk this week on Buckeye Talk about what that means in terms of hiring and who Ryan Day should maybe go after. Get the text 614-350-3315. We'll also text about it. But Andrew, given the conversations we've been having about the offensive line recruiting, this does seem to be more of a pressing issue in terms of description Ryan Day should be looking for. Justin Frye, no one has a problem with his ability to develop. Josh Simmons might be a first-round draft pick. Seth McLaughlin won the Remington Award, and it was a unanimous All-American, right? Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones, the way he had this offensive line playing in the college football playoff when you're playing with your 7th, 8th, and 9th guys, that's here nor there. That's why we all think he'd be a good NFL offensive line coach. But you're coming up on a 2026 recruiting class where there's just a lot of guys in it who are probably going, well, maybe Ohio State's where I end up, but who's going to be my coach?
Yeah, the 26 class is going to be massive, and one of the reasons why it's going to be massive, in 2023, Ohio State only signed 4 offensive linemen. They had one top 100 kid, and that was Luke Montgomery, and I think we saw in the college football playoff, Luke Montgomery played fairly well. Yep. He was in that 3-guard rotation for the 2 spots, so I think you feel pretty good about him. But that's Josh Padilla, that's Austin Saravel, that's Miles Walker. That was that class. 2024, you have Ian Moore, Gabe Van Sickle, Deontay Armstrong, and Devontae Armstrong. You have no top 100 prospects. Ian Moore was the highest rated of that bunch, 168 overall in your 2024 class. So you only signed 4. So over a 2-year span, that's 8. It's not great. 25 was really kind of where things really, I think, were not great. And we'll get to 26, but this all plays into the previous couple of years with Justin Frye, where, you signed Carter Lowe, really, really good prospect, number 73 overall. Then you got to go all the way down to Javen McFadden, number 396 overall in the 247 composite. And then you get 3-star Jake Cook, number 479. And that's it. So over a 3-year span, you signed 11 offensive linemen. That's not the quantity that you need up front. And Ryan Day said as much at National Signing Day. This is where the 2026 class comes into play, because the 2026 class is loaded with Ohioans. You've got Maxwell Riley, who's a really, really good football player. He's out of Avon Lake. Sam Greer goes to Hoban. Adam Guthrie, he's another 4-star tackle. These are all top 200 kids. These are all kids that are ready-made for Ohio State, right? Like this is a class that Ohio State kind of needed to have. You needed a strong class with strong Ohioans up front. You needed kids that grew up in the state of Ohio that you could just fill out and say, hey, you know what? They're right here. We got them. Then you throw into the mix Micah Smith, who's a really, really talented kind of borderline top 100 kid out of Vero Beach, Florida, former teammate of TJ Alford, now an Ohio State linebacker. Jackson Cantwell, the number 1 offensive tackle in the class. Ryan Day went from The Tonight Show to go see Jackson Cantwell in Missouri. So, this is a priority, right? And the 26 class is so massive for Ohio State recruiting, and it was shaping up to be massive for Justin Frye because, yeah, you can bring in portal kids. Yeah, you can go get Seth McLaughlin and turn him into a Remington Award winner. Yeah, you can go get Josh Simmons and turn him from San Diego State's right tackle into a potential first-round pick at left tackle for Ohio State. Yeah, you can do those things, but you still need to back that up with homegrown talent. You still need to back that up with homegrown players that you are developing for 3 or 4 years, because the offensive line is a development position, and sometimes if you miss on a transfer portal prospect, can really set you back. So the 26 class was shaping up to be massive, not just because of what this class could represent, but what the previous classes kind of didn't in terms of the quantity of players that you're bringing in, because frankly, 3 is just not enough on the offensive line.
And how crazy is college football? 12 hours before this news broke, Justin Frye was visiting with an offensive lineman. That's just the business of sports at this point. It also, I wonder what those conversations were like over the past week with some of these guys. You mentioned Jackson Cantwell. Ryan Day was there. Justin Frye was there as well. There's been a few offensive line recruits where Justin Frye obviously there. but Ryan Day was there as well. And I wonder if these were part of the conversations of not necessarily 100% Justin Frye was going to leave, because obviously reports earlier in the week were that he was interviewing to be the Bears offensive line coach, but just the idea of if he's not here, where does Ryan Day pivot going forward? Because you're right, 2026 is a big one. You're talking about transfer portal. They're going to try to do it again with 2025 with Ethan Yawa and Phillip Daniels as potentially the two starting tackles that they pulled out of the transfer portal, while their interior is a lot of homegrown guys. And so that I wrote this, you've wrote it, we've all kind of wrote it at this point. I don't doubt Ryan Day's ability to find a guy who can develop the offensive line at this point. I think he's done it twice now. Greg Trujawa at his best was good at developing the offensive line. He just, physical. Got older, health issues got in the way there, and so the recruiting wasn't as good. Justin Frye spent 3 years showing us how well of a developer he is. I think Ryan Day's got to go find a guy who can do that, but also, can you go recruit the best in the country? And that just doesn't mean going and getting the Luke Montgomery, who is within a 2.5 hour radius to them. Yes, you have to get that guy, but who's the guy you're going to get where you just won a recruiting battle? I don't think Justin Frye ever did that. And it's been a long time since Greg Shadrawa did that. In fact, I think the last time Ohio State did that, it was probably Harry Miller in 2019, because even Donovan Jackson had ties to Ohio State. And that was a lot of Ryan Day more than it was anything else. And so that's what this is. It's the intrigue is finding the guy who, yes, can you continue to develop this offensive line at a high level? Right. But can you go get high-level guys? Because you just mentioned it. 11 guys in 3 years plus 3 transfers where 2 of the 3 were hits and 1 wasn't in Vic Cutler. That's not going to get it done. And it puts you in a position where we saw this past year where they're scrambling to find options in the middle of the season because worst-case scenario happened.
Well, yeah, and like, like you just said, you got to hit the ground running with whoever you hire. Mm-hmm. Maxwell Riley, the kid out of Avon Lake, he's down to Clemson and Ohio State. His decision sounds like it's going to come in March. It is now February as we do this video. January lasted 847 days, I know, but Maxwell Riley, a decision is coming. And Justin Frye, the guy who had been recruiting him for 3 years, is no longer there. So this is kind of a weird dynamic, right? And I know some people may be thinking, well, you're just telling me that he's not a good recruiter, and now all of a sudden it matters that he's going out and, they don't have this recruiter on the trail. It's a fair point, but it does matter when you have somebody who had been building a relationship and you potentially are starting anew. We don't know. Look, this happened, an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. This is still very new. We don't know the dynamics exactly of what this is going to mean for individual recruits. We don't know the dynamics of what this is going to mean for, kind of the host of recruits. Maybe, they promote internally. I know there's some options there where, they could hire inside the coaching staff, and you go, okay, well, maybe you can keep building that relationship. But if Ryan Day thinks the best man for the job is somebody who's currently in the NFL or, currently at a G5 school or something like that, or at a school out west who maybe doesn't have ties to these kids in Ohio, you're kind of starting anew with some of these kids. And that's not the place you want to be at this point on February 1st. So, yeah, this is a big deal. And, I think, we can talk about Justin Frye and the recruiting element of this. The development was awesome. I don't think anybody can debate that, especially with the run that they had in the playoff. But the recruiting aspect of this is fascinating because now you are starting from scratch. And for these kids that have been building a relationship with him for years, he had been to see them a bunch. I mean, Maxwell Riley told me that, Justin Frye was one of the first coaches that he remembers talking to. And, I think they had a relationship dating back to his freshman year. And now he's about to go into his senior year, and Ohio State might have a new offensive line coach recruiting him. So when you have to hit the ground running if you're a new offensive line coach for Ohio State, because if you don't, you're probably going to have to restart again and do this whole portal thing again next year. Now, at that point, that's not really going to be the fault of the offensive line coach, whoever they hire, if you do have to go into the portal because you're just kind of behind a little bit. But you've got to hit the ground fast because this is a class that, frankly, was ready-made for Ohio State to look at itself and go, wow, we have an elite class. We could recruit 3 kids out of this state and be home for lunch. We could go see them at 9 a.m. and we'll be home before noon. You could have that ready made for you. Then you've got a couple of really other talented kids. I mentioned Cantwell, mentioned Micah Smith out of state. This class was ready made, and Ohio State has to be able to capitalize on that.
I'm not going to say they're starting from scratch. I mean, they tell you you're not committing to one coach, you're committing to a program. So there have been other people involved. And what helps with this is your head coach is a pretty good recruiter, whether as an opener, as a closer. So again, this is part of the business. They understand that, which is why I don't think Justin Frye is at the level of where Brian Hartline is, where Larry Johnson is, where Tim Walton are, where it's like, if that guy's not here, there's a drastic change and shift in how you have to view how a program can recruit a certain position. I don't think it's necessarily at that point. So it's not necessarily starting from scratch. It's just I think Ryan Day is going to be more involved with the offensive line recruiting over the next couple of months here, over the next however long. While one, he's finding a new guy to take over as his offensive line coach, but also as that guy is getting to know people. Because again, you don't want what happened with that 2023 class where you had Luke Montgomery, Austin Saraveld, and Josh Padilla, and then Miles Walker, where you got the 3 Ohio guys. But Justin Frye was back then playing catch up, so you couldn't fault him for that. You learn from your mistakes. You learn from the past. So I'm sure Ryan Day will be heavily involved with the offensive line recruiting for the near future between now and whoever knows how long, maybe until signing day. Get the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, we'll continue to talk about this on Buckeye Talk. So go listen to that wherever you find podcasts. Stephen, Andrew,